Hi, I'm Patrick Markfort from Articulate Nerd.
And I'm Dave Ferraro from Comics and More. And today we are going to be discussing two Franco-Belgian comics that were just released through Fantagraphics. They have kind of a line going where last year they released a David B. comic, The Littlest Pirate King, and Toys in the Basement by... who was that one from?
Well, we're going to do a bad job on pronunciations this week.
Yes, we will.
Stefan Blanquet. That's probably just a butchering of that name.
It's okay. Yeah, there's a lot of French and Belgian names that we will be trying to pronounce, so please forgive us if we do say them incorrectly.
We're trying.
This week we are going to be doing the latest two that just came out about a month ago. Murder by High Tide, a Gil Jordan Privat Detective mystery. And then Sibyl-Anne versus Ratticus, which is the first one we will be doing. Alright, Sibyl-Anne versus Ratticus. I really enjoyed this one.
I really enjoy the title.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Ratticus.
Ratticus, yep. I really do like animal comics. Obviously, I'm going to enjoy like Donald Duck and stuff when that comes out shortly from Fantagraphics as well. That's going to be amazing. But I like the fantasy titles. I like Mouse Guard and stuff like that. And this is kind of kind of plays off that. And when I was young, I read books like Mother Westwind's Animal Friends, all kinds of books like this. But I like how they even describe this one as it's not on the back here, but I heard it described as like a Wind in the Willows kind of thing. So I like the Wind in the Willows type of reference because we read that actually last year together. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun.
I can see.
And this is animals in like a forest. You kind of like have a community going on, kind of like Wind in the Willows. Mm-hmm. So I kind of appreciated that, especially since we were kind of coming off of that. And I just enjoyed this Ratticus character who we kind of see the first half of the book through Ratticus's eyes. And he's like a villain character. He gets kicked out of like his castle where he's pretty much, for generations like his family has been getting like kind of fat and lazy, kind of living off of the scraps or whatever the castle. And now he has to actually like make a living for himself, and he's not very keen about it. So immediately goes into the forest and he starts to bully the other animals there. He immediately, like when he walks into the forest, he pretty much like kicks another animal's like butt and steals their food.
Right.
So that's the kind of person he is. Until he meets the sheriff character, who's a porcupine, and he's a lot tougher. So he has to kind of like comply to what the sheriff does, and immediately has him go into like manual labor to atone for like himself, and he kind of pretends to atone. But he keeps coming up with these like schemes to get back at the forest animals and to be able to live in the community with as little work as possible, I guess. So the first half is pretty much Ratticus like going through these schemes, and you kind of see him like cursing the other animals and stuff as we go through. The second half, kind of a spoiler alert here, but Ratticus kind of like goes into the city and he becomes like the king of the rats of the city, and the city rats are all afraid of like of being poisoned and stuff, and they're not very satisfied with the king there because he's eating all the food and stuff like that, and he kind of offers to lead them and brings them out to the country where obviously there's food in abundance, and he's like, we can just take them, we just need to put the forest animals like in their place and rule over them. So he pretty much does that. He comes into the forest, and Sibyl-Anne is this little mouse who like makes pies, and she's very friendly. And she and the porcupine sheriff and this bird friend of theirs get away from the rats as they invade. They're kind of secluded on this little island where they try to defend the island. And in that second half of the book where it really gets into this big, like, kind of epic storyline a little bit.
Yeah, big battle.
Yeah, it's really those three fending off these rats and battling these rats and trying to take back the forest, which is really cool, I thought. Mm-hmm. So I like that at the beginning you get it from the Ratticus's point of view, pretty much, you know what I mean? Kind of like scheme after scheme that kind of fail, whatever. But then the second half is this kind of like epic, like fending off of them, and we get it through the good guy's eyes. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of cool that it kind of went between those two different, directions. Yeah, what do you think of it?
I really liked it too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a good, kind of charming comic, really beautifully drawn and cartooned.
Mm-hmm.
I probably appreciated both of these books that we're reviewing this time more as examples of a scene. You know, these releases are both from this kind of golden age of Franco-Belgian comics from post World War II up until 1970, and this one represents kind of the funny animal genre. And Raymond McElroy is a kind of a master, apparently, of that genre. It's a whole scene of comics that I'm not very familiar with. I don't think a lot of U.S. Readers really are too familiar with. A few publishers have done a few things. Probably something like the Smurfs would be like the most high profile. Well, and Tintin, but that's a lot earlier. So anyway, I appreciated both these books more as kind of like windows of a larger scene, more than great works that you must read. Like, I don't know that you must read Sibyl-Anne versus Ratticus. Like, you must read these two stories in this particular book. But as part of this larger project that Fantagraphics is doing to bring light to some of these creators and works, I really enjoyed it. So within the context, I enjoyed it even more than the book itself. But I did enjoy the book itself. I thought it was a good adventure.
Yeah. And it looks like they're actually in the back. It kind of talks about next spring they're going to be doing another Sibyl-Anne Ratticus book.
Yeah.
So they'll be continuing that next spring. So if you like that, you can continue. These were actually, both of these were originally published in Spiro magazine. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Yep. And there's a lot of like great European comics coming out now. You mentioned Peyo, but there's like, Archaea is doing the Secret History of the World, is it? Something like that. They're doing The Killer from Mats. NBM is doing nice collections. There's Miss Don't Touch Me. I'm really digging the European stuff that's coming our way. I haven't really dug into Tintin much. Mm-hmm. I did buy the first volume, but I haven't really read it yet, except for the first story in it. But I'm really happy to see them over here because I really enjoy the type of stories that we're seeing from them. They're much more gentler. They're not like dark and gritty. Like a lot of the stuff you see over here.
Yeah, but there's a lot of times an edge to it too, even kind of a satirical edge. Certainly that's the case with Peyo and the Smurfs, and a little bit with Sibyl-Anne. But yeah, I know what you mean. There's kind of a lack of pretension. It's nice to take a look at what were once very popular mass entertainment for children, that are just nothing more than what they are. Just well-produced comics that kids are meant to enjoy. Whereas in the U.S., we used to have a great tradition of funny animal comics as well, and they're not around as much anymore, except for some of the examples that you named. But superheroes, for example, something that kids essentially used to read has sort of been co-opted by older readers. And that whole genre has sort of changed and become sort of self-referential, and that kind of innocence is kind of lost. So it's always nice to look at comics like these that were just put out to be these great entertainments that ran for a long time. I think it said there were 16 volumes of Sibyl-Anne that were collected, and I'm not sure where this falls in the run. I'm thinking fairly early in the run, although I'm not sure. So yeah, again, I just kind of like the idea that there were comics like Sibyl-Anne more than I liked reading Sibyl-Anne versus Ratticus. But it was a great book. You could read it and enjoy it just on its own. Yeah. But if you're a serious student of comics at all, it's something you probably want to look at and consider in context.
Yeah, very high quality. And I think actually, there have been a lot of like good all ages books that have come out recently. A lot of graphic novels like Gunnar Court and Courtney Crummer and stuff like that have come out in the last decade. And before that, there wasn't really too much of that out there. I feel like, except Tintin and stuff was happening overseas, and in Japan there's a lot of good stuff in manga. But I feel like in America there wasn't too much until we started really seeing graphic novels in stores.
Right.
So it's I like that. I'm very happy to see that kind of stuff. I really enjoy all ages comics.
let me ask you that. How do you think, like, these were produced for French-speaking children in the late 60s? How do you think this would hold up today for kids? Like, I mean, kids obviously respond well to Jeff Smith's Bone. I mean, they love that kind of thing and a lot of other comics.
I think kids who like Jeff Smith's Bone would really enjoy this.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
I think they probably would.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little innocent, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Bone went to some pretty dark places, you know what I mean?
That's true.
This went to a few dark places, but not as dark.
It's
you know
mostly just fun.
Yeah, it's like One in the Willows, like I was talking about earlier. It kind of had that like kind of whimsical feel to it. You know, it's just like kind of a nice community in the forest, and you know, there's a silly little bad guy that you know they have to kind of contend with.
Yeah, I think it would appeal to kids too, and it holds up well with some of the other examples of the genre that are out here right now. So I'd be happy to read more Sibyl-Anne. I don't know that I would need to read all of Sibyl-Anne, but if Fantagraphics put out a few more volumes, I'll probably read them. It was a lot of fun. It's a good book.